So for those of you who are new to Win House, I want to share a little bit about the organization at the heart of this evening. Win House is one of Alberta's longest standing and most trusted frontline agencies supporting survivors of gender-based violence. It's pretty remarkable. It's been around for 55 years, and Win House has provided safe shelter, crisis support, and life-changing resources to women, children, and non-binary individuals that are fleeing violence in Alberta, in Edmonton. Their work helps survivors heal, rebuild, and move toward independence and safety. Their work also really makes a difference long-term, and they do need more support than ever. It is more urgent than ever. Globally, 1 in 3 women experience physical or intimate partner violence in their lifetime, and that's a disturbing number. And closer to home, every hour, every day in Alberta, a woman becomes a victim of violence by an intimate partner, a rate that's actually higher than the national average. These statistics represent more than numbers. They represent lives, families, workplaces, and communities impacted by violence. So you showing up tonight really makes a huge difference, and it's pretty amazing the work that Win House has done over all these years. I know at some point someone's been touched by someone going through this in their life, or they know someone that has used Win House, so it's pretty amazing. Earlier this month, on March 5th, Win House launched the Light the Darkness campaign right here at Kingsway Mall, and during that launch, Joanna, a survivor and past resident of Win House, shared powerful words that capture the spirit of resilience behind this whole campaign. She said, "Win House saved my life. Hope carried me beyond darkness. Courage made me unstoppable." Those words remind us that behind every story is a person who found the strength to seek safety and essentially start again. And that takes a lot of courage. Last year, Win House sheltered more than 400 residents and answered thousands of crisis calls. Yet more than 80% of individuals seeking shelter had to be turned away because there simply wasn't any space available. And that's why events like tonight really, really matter. At the campaign launch, Win House CEO Leslie Allen also shared a powerful vision. The goal is to create a world where organizations like Win House don't need to exist. That is the goal. And a world where no one has to flee their home for safety. Until that day comes, though, the work continues, and the support of communities like this one is absolutely essential. Now, I think we're going to have some incredible discussions tonight, and we have some amazing speakers to engage in those discussions. And it's not just about shelter tonight. It's about what happens after crisis. It's about what truly takes to move from immediate safety to long-term stability. When most people hear the word shelter, they picture a bed, a roof, or perhaps a hot meal. But what happens inside Win House is actually far more complex and so much more than just that. Every woman, every child, every non-binary individual who walks through those doors arrives with a different story, layered trauma, and systemic barriers that do not disappear overnight and once the violence essentially stops. So we're seeing increasing complexity because of housing scarcity, rising living costs, mental health challenges, immigration barriers, justice system navigation, and the long shadow of trauma on children. Safety is the first step, but stability is the long-term journey, and that is obviously the goal. So tonight we want to pull back the curtain and share what exactly that journey looks like. What does a sustainable exit really mean? What does it take operationally? What role does community play and partnership in making survivors not just survive, but rebuild and thrive? You will hear from leaders who see this work from different vantage points, strategy, operations, and the front lines. Together, their perspectives tell a story, one that moves from crisis response to long-term transformation. You'll hear from leaders who see this work from different vantage points, obviously, and at the end of the day, this is not just about providing refuge, it's about changing trajectories. I'm so honored to bring our panelists aboard. So first off, we have Leslie Allen, the Chief Executive Officer of Win House, bringing more than 35 years of leadership in the nonprofit sector. We also have Ashley Baxter, the Chief Programs and Operating Officer, who leads innovative and client-centered programs supporting those seeking refuge. And Nova Winter, Director of Client Experience, whose work focuses on creating safe spaces and support individuals as they rebuild their lives. So please join me in welcoming our wonderful panelists tonight. So come on stage. Thank you so much, ladies. All right, so Leslie, Alberta continues to experience some of the highest rates of gender-based violence in the country. I don't think a lot of people realize just how bad it can get in Alberta. When people hear the word shelter, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding around the depth and complexity of that and the work that Wynn House does?
Yeah, as you said, Lisa, it's very true. People think shelter is, a bed. People come in, they get a bed, they get a meal. A lot of people think it's like a MAT program, which a lot of the, in a lot of the homeless sector, that's the type of program that is being offered there. But when a woman comes in who's experiencing domestic violence, the first thing that they encounter is somebody who is listening to them, and most importantly, believing what they're saying. Because so many times people, women who are saying, this is what's happening in my life, and people say, oh, really, is it that bad? Or, gee, I thought he was such a great guy. And it nullifies everything that she's feeling. So she's first got somebody who believes her. Secondly, she's got a place to rest. And that is the number one most important thing that's needed. And that rest might be a night. It might be a few nights. It might be 2 weeks of just being able to feel safe. And that's not only for her, but it's also for the children, who for the first time might really, really feel that there is safety. Once she is at a place where she is ready to begin to dig in and figure out what those next steps are going to be for her, that's when the programming begins. And that's when all of the wonderful things that we do at Wynn House, talking about next steps, talking about housing, education, healthcare, addictions and mental health, looking at the entire person and really understanding where they're at. So there's so much more that goes on behind the doors of a shelter. It really is not just a bed and a meal.
Maybe my loud voice will get in there. Okay, I'm just going to really yell. Finally, my loud voice is doing me a favor. So, Nova, from the front lines, you see a lot and you see how much things have changed over the years. How has it evolved in terms of the needs for women and families that kind of show an increase in the complexity of the situation?
I mean, since COVID, there we go. Since COVID, I took my questions and I was asking some of our staff to really get a good idea of what they feel like they're noticing as being a change. A lot of our staff have worked with us for many, many years. And so most of the staff actually highlighted that there has become more dangerous situations. So women coming in experiencing more extreme forms of violence. The situations are, more and more closer to fatalities. So our staff are doing danger assessments or, trying to figure out for the client at what state of danger are they. And so higher and higher scores on the danger assessment. And then a lot of other complex needs. So complex mental health concerns, immigration concerns. I mean, that's a really big one that we saw this year. So folks with precarious immigration, maybe their partner was their sponsor and there was, a form of coercive control there. There's all kinds of different ways that folks have been experiencing family violence or intimate partner violence that have just, the staff had said, come to more and more extremes. And we've been very busy. So there's never a time where we have a room that isn't full. And if it is, we're working to get it filled as soon as possible.
I just wanted for folks in the room who may not know what a danger assessment is, it's our validated tool that assesses the level of lethality within your relationship. And so the higher the score, the higher likelihood of femicide to occur within your relationship. And so we're seeing higher rates of high lethality in relationships for women that are coming into our spaces.
That's a scary stat. I'm actually curious, when you say, so you're seeing more fatalities than ever, is it that people are in situations where they keep going back and then it ends up being deadly, or is it more just it goes from zero to something horrific faster than maybe days prior? I don't know.
So we're seeing, physical violence is not something that is not typically the first experience for women experiencing violence. There's a lot of coercive control that occurs before the violence happens. So there's things like removing you don't have a job, removing your friends and family, moving you to an isolated community. There's a lot of things that are occurring within your trusted relationship to remove you from your safety before the physical violence occurs. And then the violence escalates. And then once a woman leaves is actually the highest time. The most riskiest part of a relationship, a violent relationship, is the moment she chooses to leave. That is when lethality becomes significantly more at risk. And when strangulation is a part of your relationship, the likelihood of lethality becomes more prominent when strangulation is a part of your relationship as well.
Wow. It's good to know those warning signs too. I think some people forget. You just think out of the gate it's violence. Sticking with you, Ashley, from a systems perspective, what are some pressure points right now? So what barriers are making it harder for survivors to move from crisis to stability?
Yeah, for sure. So once people are in our shelter, which is difficult within itself, we definitely, unfortunately, have significantly more need than we do have shelter spaces within our province. And so we have a capacity issue for folks leaving violent relationships. And then if they are lucky enough to get a bed within our shelter, the affordability crisis is really creating barriers for folks to move forward. We are really struggling. Our staff have become experts, really, have a high skill at navigating the housing programs and community resources, because we are seeing longer stays in our shelter as a result of affordability issues. When you're leaving a violent relationship, you're starting from scratch. You have to start your entire life over, and being able to afford a place and find a place are two things that are extremely difficult right now. And so we are navigating a lot of different things within our space. Our staff are navigating a lot of different resources, and we're creating partnerships with affordable housing partners within the city to try and expedite moving folks into safe spaces post our shelter. But the reality is the bottleneck is real. We can't move people on as fast as we would like to move into safe and sustainable exits, which diminishes how many people we can actually serve because there's no place to go.
Nova, could you walk us through what happens after intake? So what exactly does a safe exit look like after the emergency shelter?
Yeah, I mean, Leslie alluded to it a little bit. So we kind of came up with the idea of a safe and sustainable exit as a concept. And really what our goal is to reduce recidivism. So get people into a place or, with the resources around them that are going to help keep them safe for a longer period of time. But really what that means is, like, practically speaking, when folks come into shelter, a safe and sustainable exit, if you imagine what that is for you, it actually might be really different for the folks that we serve or for each individual. So it's actually very client-centered. So we sit down, our staff will sit down with one of our residents and kind of work through a goal attainment or talk through what a safe and sustainable exit would look like for them. And that might be really different than what each of us would imagine. But that's what we kind of focus on. So that can look like housing. Like Ashley said, our staff have become really, jack of all trades. They're talking to landlords. They're taking people to, around the neighborhood looking for rentals. They're doing all of the things that maybe a housing worker, or if you've heard of that role before, would do. Our staff are doing. So setting goals, looking for housing, it can be, getting income established. And that can be, even transferring. We had, some clients who maybe their child tax benefit is going to their partner. And so we got to work with CRA to get that tax benefit switched over. So like Ashley said, you're really starting from scratch. So we're doing all of those things with clients, and we're taking as much time as it needs to get all those things in place, so that when somebody successfully, goes to their next step, they have the foundational things that they need to continue moving forward. And so another piece of that is safety planning. So we'll do a lot of that with clients. So that's basically making a plan for, all the things that could go, wrong. And what are we going to do to maybe avoid those things or reduce barriers? So we do a lot of that work. And then the other piece is what we kind of call a warm handoff. So we can't do everything for somebody. We have limited scope. So what we try to do is set them up in community with supports that are already in the city, already working. Instead of doubling up work, what we try to do is partner up and connect people so that when they move on to a different neighborhood or a different place, they have people that they're going to still connect with, or they're going to have places that they know to go to, or childcare that they know is available. So it's really all of those things that you could imagine if you were starting fresh. That's what we do. And that all leads to what we hope for, which is a safe and sustainable exit.
And I'd just like to add to that, because there is not a lot of places to do this warm handoff, the board of directors and I have been working for the last few years in talking about what is that next step that Windhouse is going to be taking. And we were very fortunate last year to get surplus land through the city of Edmonton. And we're in the process right now of putting the final architectural designs to a 64-unit, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom complex in the Miller area. And we have somebody, one of our new neighbors, 2 of our new neighbors who are volunteering for us, which is very exciting because these individuals are going to be our women's new neighbors. And, having the entire neighborhood embracing this project and making a welcoming space for women who are coming in with no one and nothing. It's going to be such an important element. So when we're looking at the safe and sustainable exit, this is just going to give us more time to be working with the woman and her children to ensure that everything is set up in such a way that she is going to be able to be successful when she moves into permanent affordable housing. And we were also going to be leaning in on our community and using community resources for their support so that when they leave Windhouse, they can actually take these resources into the community. They don't have to start from scratch, and they will be there when they need them, because chances are a couple of months, a couple of years down the road, they're going to need these supports again, so they'll have them there.
And sticking with you, Leslie, you somewhat spoke to this, but some people think that safety is having a bed for the night. But can you explain what's required to really achieve long-term stability?
Yeah, there are so many elements for stability, and I think that is maybe what safety is definitely paramount, number one. But the sustainability is so much more complex because I've talked to some affordable housing providers who I'm really trying to get into relationships with to be able to say, when women are moving out of transitional housing, can they move into your complexes? And so many of them say, I'd love to be able to help out, but are they going to be good tenants? So, being able to learn, what does it take to be a good tenant? What does it take to actually have a household? What does it take to budget? What does it take? All of these things may not have been a part of that person's life up to that point. And now all of a sudden they have to learn all of these brand new skills. So there's all of that around sustainability. It's also then affordability. Can that person continue to afford where they're living on the salary that they have? And unfortunately, too many times we hear the word affordable housing, and affordable housing does not necessarily mean that people who are living on Alberta Works are going to be able to pay that rent. It's the mark is a lot higher than anything that a woman who is dependent on Alberta Works can actually afford. So it's also encouraging more not-for-profits to try to get into the second and transitional housing space, which is very scary for an organization. We're just right now going through the whole conversation of Windhouse is no longer going to be just a shelter for women. We're now becoming landlords. And what does that look like? And how is that going to change Windhouse? So there's a lot of changes that have to happen. And, we need progressive boards, and we need strong individuals who are willing to take on the challenge of doing this.
Nova, how is the transition for children different than for adults? Like, how do we need to think about entire families instead of just individuals?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, a lot of times we're really focused on mom and the women that come into our space. But there's a whole little, group of kids that come along with her usually. And I think it's so often we think, oh, kids are, resilient, or kids are, oh, they're just playing, they're making, they're okay. But actually it's incredibly hard on kids, because if you could imagine, their brains aren't quite at the same place of development as an adult is. And so when they experience something like, coming into shelter, leaving their home in a rush and coming into shelter, that can be so confusing, right? And just emotional, because they're seeing mom in distress as well. It's emotional, it's confusing, they don't get to maybe talk to dad anymore. What does that mean for them? And that can usually end up looking like escalated behaviors or skill regression. Like kids can't regulate. They're really, dysregulated constantly. And then that's really hard on mom, because she's trying to, deal with all these things that she has to deal with to get a safe and sustainable exit. And her kids are, we had kids that, are older, maybe in kindergarten, back in diapers, because is so much stress happening in their lives. And so it's really hard on kids. And so what we need to do, and what Windhouse is working on, at least over the last year, we've been really working on placing emphasis on how we care for kids, and not just kids, but kids and the entire family, because there's that piece of attachment. Mom's stressed, kid is stressed, it might push them away from each other. And so what we want to do is create spaces where moms and kids can find a little bit of peace, where they can spend some time together. And then when kids starts to relax a little bit, then maybe mom can have a conversation about what's actually happening.
So we're really trying to focus on creating attachment and routine, and also in encouraging that safety. When they first come into shelter, they may have left their favorite stuffy. They may have left their blanket that are they afraid of the dark? Do we need to get them a nightlight? What kind of books do they like to have in shelter at home, so that we can bring them into shelter, so that there's some sort of resemblance of normalcy also, so that they can feel safe and let their guard down within our space.
Ashley, when it comes to wraparound supports like counseling, childcare, employment navigation, and advocacy, sometimes that can often be the difference between surviving or rebuilding. So how does Windhouse incorporate or integrate these supports to prevent families from going back and cycling back into crisis?
One thing that I think Windhouse is really good at is trying not to reinvent the wheel. So we are really good at sheltering, and that's where our expertise lies. And we intentionally and strategically partner with community organizations that can offer support within our space. So as an example, we have nursing services that we partner with so that women can get a health professional upon entry into our shelter. There's a registered nurse right on site. Once a month, twice a month, we have a doctor that comes on site and assesses folks who are registered nurses triaged for the doctor. So we have, through one of the hospitals here. So we have intentionally partnered with organizations like YWCA for counseling. So we have a registered psychologist on site once a week to provide counseling for women. We also have a new partnership with another organization that is able to provide counseling for children. So we're doing group work with children in shelter so that they can also have a place to put their feelings. And so being really intentional while someone is in shelter so that we are able to support that safe, sustainable exit and the healing that one needs to be able to move forward into the next steps.
I'm going to assume that Win House has been able to stick around for 55 years because of community support. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. And we know funding can be not guaranteed sometimes. So I think people like you who have really stuck by Win House. I know I was talking to Ted earlier, who's been a supporter for 30 years, which is pretty amazing. For those in the room that want to make a measurable impact, what does donor support really allow you to do that core funding does not? Leslie.
Oh, so much. So much. We are supported by the government for sort of the meat and potatoes, right? For the bed, for keeping the electricity on, for having the minimal staff to be able to keep the operations funding. That and as the years have gone on, and I mean, we all know that government funding has become tighter and tighter and tighter, particularly around anything in social services. And there are so many people in need and so many people that, so many different areas that the government needs to be looking at. And they can't do everything. So we've been just incredibly fortunate having long-term donors, short-term donors, just the community just rallying around us and saying, we're here for you, and helping out in many, many different ways. And how does that help us? Well, things like being able to provide therapeutic yoga, being able to provide equine therapy. All of these things are sort of over and above what we could normally do just if we were just to lean in on government funding. We're also able to do things like, actually ensure that we are running a good organization and that we can steward the funds that we're getting from the philanthropic community. A super important part of what a not-for-profit does. And in too many cases, it's some overworked ED doing it off the side of their desk. And that's really not the way to be running an organization. So we have been very, very lucky to have incredible community support. We're beginning to see it again with the Miller Project, where we're getting people saying, yes, we'd like to get behind that. So many things, many good things and many good programs can come out of the dollars.
And Ashley, where does flexible philanthropic support make the biggest difference in terms of operationally?
In all operations. Truly, the philanthropic support is what allows us to go beyond the meat and potatoes that Leslie was speaking about. The ability for us to have our trauma-informed child family support worker, who all of the work Nova talked about with children and youth is as a result of this position, that we're able to have over and above our meat and potatoes. The ability to have our counseling services, our nursing services, and being able to continue offering wraparound supports within shelter is a direct result of philanthropic support to our organization.
And Nova, when it comes to on the front lines, how does community support really change the trajectory of a resident?
Well, I mean, really building on what these two have already said, I can't emphasize enough that, like, sometimes you think, oh, your money's just going to go to some kind of high level thing, and it's never going to actually reach the people that need it most. But it actually does. So, like Ashley's saying, just to even pay for a registered nurse, that comes from folks in community paying for that. And then not even that, all the way down to like, we provide diapers and formula for moms when they come in and they have no money. And so we can say to our staff, like, go buy what baby needs. Get baby fed, it doesn't matter, just pay for it. But that comes from community support. So if we don't have that coming in, then we actually have to say no to some of those things. And that's really hard. Again, like our clients, they get to connect with a registered psychologist every week, and they get to continue on potentially with the organization, getting therapeutic supports once they leave. But we couldn't have had that first connection unless we had money coming in from community. So it's huge. I mean, even down to, we have a partnership with Goodwill. If you drop your stuff off at Goodwill and say it's for Win House, our women get gift cards so that when they come in to shelter with nothing, we can give them gift cards to Goodwill and they can go buy the things they need. So even down to that, it's huge. Everything that you do actually makes a difference in the shelter, right? Right then and there. When I asked Ashley, hey, can we buy this thing for this client? One day we had a client that she had her hair cut off by her partner, came into shelter with a haircut. I don't know if I didn't ask you for that, but we paid for her haircut. So all those things come from that. And so it's huge. It's honestly huge. And we couldn't do any of the things that we do without community support.
That's amazing. I did not know about the Goodwill thing. I love Goodwill. So you just drop it off and then say it's for Win House? Wow, okay. So Leslie, what would be your message to everyone here tonight? Why, sustained community partnership is so essential, especially when we talk about long-term safety and not just emergency response.
I would say that the one thing that is so important is that gender-based violence is all of our problem. It isn't just the person who's experiencing it. It isn't because you might have a family member or you might have somebody close to you who's experiencing domestic violence. It is all of our responsibility. And when we did our opening, I challenged everybody who was in the audience that day to bring a friend, and I'm going to do it again. Bring a friend back here to Kingsway Mall to look at this wonderful installation that has been put up through Brookfield and through Kessa Stamp. And then talk about it. Talk about the stories that are happening there, because it's only when people honestly understand what this is all about that we're going to have like a movement. And of course, men are a linchpin in this. We need our allies. We need men to also be talking about domestic violence. It's very important. So what I'd like you to walk away with is the thought that domestic violence is important to me and that I have a responsibility to talk to others about it.
That's a great message. Thank you very much. And now we'd like to open the floor. Does anyone have any question for these lovely ladies? Absolutely anything you've been wondering about? We'll bring the mic to you. Don't be shy. Any questions, Shelley? Okay. Well, that's okay. We'd like to we do. Okay. That's amazing. Thank you for doing all you've done to help so many women. That's phenomenal. Especially like after so many years and still caring. So kudos to, what was your name? Henry. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much, Henry. And on that note, what do you find was the real help for women that finally made them not go back, or maybe find an outlet to not feel like they had to go back?
Yeah, and I think that this is where the whole concept of safe and sustainable exits come in. If a woman is leaving shelter before she is ready to leave shelter, chances are that she is going to find herself into a situation, and particularly if she's got children. It's a lot better in some people's minds to go back into an abusive situation and ensure that there's a roof over my children's heads and at least there's food in their stomach. At least they've got that. So that's where we need the time. And that more than anything else, we need the time to ensure that the woman is ready to actually move into affordable into permanent affordable housing, and that she has the support that she is going to be successful in that move. This process, unfortunately, when shelters were built, it was 28 days. They're supposed to be in, out, and fixed. And we now know some 50 years later that is not the method, and not even close to the method. So being able to have places for them to go and to be able to actually take the time that they need to totally reconstruct their lives before they move on is really important.
Just in terms of community support, a piece of it is just being a good listener. I mean, I think like our share said, is just, I was just, they invited me over for coffee and I listened. And I think that's a big one. If you have people in your life, like, be a good listener. If someone shares a story, share them out. And I think, like Leslie said, maybe just, keep your comments to yourself. Be a good listener. And then understand and know what supports are available in Edmonton and who to call and how to support. And then the other piece is, decrease isolation, increase safety. So as soon as you decrease isolation, you increase safety. And that's a community thing. I mean, a lot of us are more and more these days getting isolated. We maybe don't text our friend back, or we don't check in as often as we should. And that's a big piece. You decrease isolation, you increase safety. And so think about how you can do that for the loved ones in your life, because that could be a life-saving thing.
I also think it's important for us not to blame or cast judgment on if a woman does return. We have to really think through the psychological control that has occurred. And like Leslie was saying around the devil, And so there is a significant amount of work that somebody has to put in to rebuild their lives. And in some cases, have zero idea of how to pay a bill. And so having to learn things that are not easy to learn while you have 4 children and you're needing to rebuild, and you need to get ID, and you need to get a bank account, and you need to get your income sorted, and now you need to pay rent, and now you need to set up. Do I even know how to set up my electrical bill? I don't know. And so there are lots of things that happen along with the psychological control. And so being, like Nova had said, being a listener and just keeping your P's and Q's and being available.
I'd like to welcome Leslie up to say a few more words, and then we'll maybe get to some more mingling. Oh, you have another question? Oh, great. Hold tight. Hold tight. No, it's great. I thought you were too shy.
I just had a question. What's the average stay when someone comes to the Win House? Is the standard? Because I know you said sometimes it's mostly one night. It could be 2 nights, and sometimes it's weeks if there's little children involved. That's one question, like generic. And then another question that just came to my mind. So when these women come to the shelter now, you guys connect them with the resources or exactly what they need that's taken care of. Is there any stories that you guys ever come across where women go out and they succeed in their lives, and there's certain inspiring stories that come out of it, and they come back and say, you know what, thank you, I was there once and this is what happened, this is who I've become, and I just can't thank you enough for, that Win House was there when I was in need. Like, any stories?
So we, our length of stay right now is between 31 and 62 days. With our safe and sustainable exit, this is now year 2 of us being really intentional in our philosophy. And we also prior had a 21-day commitment from a women's shelter sector across the way. It was 21 days and you had to leave. And we kind of ixnayed that and focused on the safe and sustainable exit. And within that, we are now within 31 and 62 day stay. We are still an emergency shelter, but we do have people that are staying 6 to 8 months of time. And that's a significant amount of time to be in a shelter space. In terms of stories, we have, yes, we will receive emails and phone calls of families calling us back to tell us that their story. We have kids who stayed in shelter, who remember being in our space and the services they received and the kindness the staff provided them. We recently received a few months ago a story of a woman who was in our shelter for a really long time and has left and has restarted her life with her children. And she spoke about in length about her time at Wynn House, but what that did to set her up for success and how she is still safe today and she is thriving. She has a career that she is loving. Her kids are happy. They're in school. They're doing great. And so much has been settled in her life. And we don't go out and ask for those stories. And it's really nice when our residents email us back or call us to just say, you know what, I just want to take a minute to say thank you. It just lights a fire under our staff's butts to remind us why we're here and what we're doing. Because sometimes the work is really hard. We hear really hard things every day, several times a day. We're never not full. And there's new stories every day coming to us. And sometimes it's very hard. And to hear those stories, to come back, it reminds us what we're here and why we're doing what we're doing.
Did anyone else have a question? Thanks.
Just wondering, what are you finding that people are needing as soon as they come in that you think you're struggling with the most?
What people are needing as soon as they come in. Well, it might be unconventional, but like Leslie said, rest. So if you've been in fight or flight for years, potentially, you get in a room that you can lock the door, you can lay on the bed, and you can just relax. I think that's the number one thing that people need is rest. And we let them have that. The other maybe number one thing is, like support or respite for their children. Like, how can somebody watch my baby while I take a shower and rest some more? Well, we do a lot of that too. So it's kind of like things that you maybe wouldn't imagine off the bat. Another piece then, once we get kind of past that point, another one is income. Financial abuse is a really big thing, and it's something that you don't really think about, but it's a huge, it's a way that people use coercive control, right? So like Ashley said, some people have never even used a bank card before. They don't have an income. Their partner gets their child tax benefit, all these different things. So income is generally the next thing that we support with. So those are kind of like the top ones. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
That sheet.
Any other things from you guys that you can think of?
Hi. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I have a daughter who's fleeing violence. And I just wanted to know if in other parts of Alberta, can women come to Edmonton and seek shelter with Wynn House?
Yes. The short answer. There are, I think, 51 women's shelters in Alberta. Across the entire province, in small towns to big urban centers, but we support anyone who calls in. We have a bed and a space available. You're welcome in our space.
What would be the best way? Is it simply picking up the phone and calling, or can you show up at the door?
Yeah, it's our address is confidential, so it's not available to the public to show up at the door. our helpline is the best way to access us, and it goes to our staff who answer the call and answer every call that comes through.
Did you ever help someone change name or ID to help them get away from the violence?
No, I don't think we've done that. We've supported with emergency protection orders and the court system through that way. We've definitely supported in that, but not in identity change.
You all fuck done on police, right?
Yeah, court orders. Yeah.
You all thought I could go. I didn't you are you but like we made and these are all success. We how can you go to the point? That's if I can't get these children.
I only caught some of that. Sorry.
I think he means it's, it's like restraining order. It's like, it's a piece of paper. Like, does that even do enough, or what do you take extra precautions?
You say it does.
Yeah, 100%. It does only go so far, and that is a 1,000% an issue within our society, that the piece of paper is legitimately a piece of paper. Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh yeah, do it.
In that case, something we do have available, we just started this about, I guess we're into the first year of it. We have actually a justice navigator. So we have somebody that our residents can connect to on staff who specializes in anything to do with legal issues, the court system, any kind of justice issues.
Just contact.
Yeah, child custody. So she's not a lawyer, but she's a social worker, but she focuses on that and, goes with people to court. She'll advocate on their behalf and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely help with that because, it only goes so far, and it's kind of a complicated system. So.
Yeah, I'll give it all.
Great point too, especially, when there's kids involved and you share custody or whatnot. So that's great to hear you guys have that now. Are there any other questions? Are you sure? Okay, we'll bring Leslie up.
Okay. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And in closing tonight, I'd like to leave you with this. Every day at Wen House, we meet women who have done something extraordinarily brave. They have chosen to leave violence. And this choice isn't simple. It often means leaving behind income, housing, community, sometimes immigration status, and sometimes everything that's familiar to them. Safety is the first step, but it certainly is not the finish line. What creates safety is stability. Stable housing, stable income, stable childcare, access to counseling, support navigating systems that is often overwhelming even in the best of times. This is real work. This is what prevents families from cycling back into danger. Governments play a critical role. Community plays a critical role. And philanthropic endeavors is often the catalyst that allows us to respond with flexibility, innovation, and dignity. So when you partner with Wen House, you're not just funding a bed, you're funding a second chance. You're funding a child's ability to sleep through the night. You're funding the infrastructure of safety that lasts beyond the crisis. And as we look towards the future, including our Miller project and the expansion of transitional housing, we're not just building units, we're building pathways. Pathways to independence, pathways to healing, and pathways to generational change. So tonight, somewhere in our city, a woman is deciding whether or not it is safer to stay or to leave. And whether she leaves and whether she succeeds when she does depends on what is on the other side of that door. Because of you, safety exists. So thank you for standing with us, not just once, but consistently, because sustainable exits require sustainable partnerships. So thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you for your continued support of Wen House. Please enjoy our raffle. There's still lots of food. We have our 50-50. And again, thank you for all of your support.
And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for speaking and such great insight.